While dialing through the radio waves, you stumble upon a frequency.
A liminal station dedicated to exploring the strange, the unexplained,
and the macabre.
You are about to embark on a journey into the fantastical spectrum of human imagination.
Broadcasting to you live from a dimension of mystery.
It's the Nightmare Frequency.
Good evening and welcome to the Nightmare Frequency with Mac and Lucky. This show is about mystery, and sometimes that's very true to life, and sometimes we delve into the strange or supernatural. Tonight's topic straddles that line. Missing 411 is an organization that catalogs the stories of those who have gone missing on public land, particularly in America's national parks. The following stories are all true. Whether or not they can be pieced together to form a conclusion, and what that conclusion is, we leave up to you.
Every year, hundreds of people go missing in U.S. national parks. Some of them in circumstances that would seem very difficult to get lost in. Some are never seen again. Others are found, dead or alive, in places where it would be seemingly impossible for them to have reached on their own. Many young children have been recovered alive and well, albeit worse for the wear, and have reported being saved by large creatures such as packs of wolves, bears, and some things even stranger.
Skeptics who have investigated these disappearances call them textbook examples of negligence, unpreparedness, and misadventure, things that have plagued mankind since time immemorial. Others look at these missing individuals, the extenuating circumstances surrounding them, and the common threads between them, and see a dangerous pattern of someone or something using our national parks as a hunting ground. But whatever the cause, people are going missing, and their cases are, at times, strangely, eerily similar to one another. James Madison, 67 years old, was an experienced hunter who disappeared within shouting distance of his camp while going to collect water from a nearby stream. 2 weeks later, his body was discovered 15 miles away. They found him face down in a pond, though his death was concluded to have been caused not by drowning, but by exhaustion. He was partially undressed, and his bare feet had been worn down to the bone. This case I find interesting because while it is not uncommon for missing people to be found without their clothes or shoes on, it is very uncommon to find their like feet worn down like this. You would take off your clothes and then you would like die of, exposure there, not like take off your shoes and then run for miles and miles.
Right. It certainly indicates some type of like stress or strain and some reason to be like getting to the point of wearing down that intensely. Yeah, especially taking your shoes off. I also wonder how they determine within shouting distance. Like, did they hear him shout and then we're like, whoa, this guy's gone? Or like, because like that part's like, well, was there some cause to search for him immediately, or just he like walked behind a tree, they looked away, and then boom, gone?
He and a friend had set up a hunting camp, and James had gone to fetch water from a nearby river. I don't think it was too far away, and he never came back.
He knew where the river is. Okay, I got it. I thought this guy just like walked around a corner and they were like,
I mean, basically,
vanished.
And that's going to be a common thread of almost all of these, is that someone disappeared very close to where their friends or loved ones were. It's also strange that he is floating in this pond, but he died of exhaustion. So, did he just collapse? Did he literally die of exhaustion at the edge of the pond and then splash?
Yeah, which you would think that the edge of the pond is where you're trying to get to, in the exhaustion, water, source of life.
Now, this is an older gentleman, so we have to consider the notion that maybe he got disoriented while he was out there, that his frame of mind might not be the most concrete.
It's possible.
But I think when taken as a whole with some of these other disappearances, we start to see a pattern emerge. Casey Hathaway, 3 years old, disappeared from his grandmother's front yard where he was playing with 2 other children. 2 days later, he was found alive. Yeah, you can take a breath. Less than a mile away, in an area previously searched. He was soaking wet and tangled in a patch of briars. His rescuers had to wade through waist-deep water to reach him. When asked how he got there and how he had survived, Casey claimed that a bear had taken care of him and that they were friends.
Real Jungle Book vibes on this one.
Look for the bare necessities, the simple. Can I go home?
And that's it. Yeah, okay, good. You cut it off right at the right time before we got sued. Well done.
The fair use there. Now, obviously, a child can make up, anything about what happened to him while he was gone. Maybe the bear came, the bear could be a figment of the child's imagination, and I'll give it that. But the question remains, how did this kid get across this, this water? I mean, if a rescuer, if an adult man has to wade in up to his waist, there's no way this kid made it all the way over there.
Honestly, I don't disbelieve the bear story, right? Like, there's so many stories in nature where, like, an adult predator takes care of the young offspring of some type of potential rival. Like, there's that story of the lion who takes care of the baboon child after killing its mother and, like, raises it until it's an adult, which is crazy. So, it's not out of left field for me to, like, fucking gorillas do this all the time when idiot kids fall into the zoo enclosures. They gotta, like, take care of them.
Unless they get shot, unless they get assassinated like Harambe.
Right. Yeah, I think this podcast, we can make it very clear. We hate what happened to that guy. I think he was just protecting that child.
We're going to do a later episode all about Harambe and how he might have actually been Bigfoot, but we're going to save that for a later broadcast.
I cannot wait for that. That one's on the docket for so long. I'm just very excited. But no, so for me, it's not out of left field that, maybe a bear did just, like, pull this kid over to an island and stumble off.
It's worth noting this is not far from where the kid disappeared. And it was a place where searchers had apparently already, like, this kid is tangled in these briars screaming for help. And it's, within less than a mile from where he disappeared. And the kid, he's out there for 48 hours by himself. So I don't know that this child could survive on his own.
Mm-hmm.
It would need help of some kind. Stacy Arras, 14 years old. She went on a camping trip with her family. After arriving at their isolated campsite, she took her camera and went out of sight to photograph a nearby lake. While the lens from her camera was found not far into the woods, Stacy remains missing to this day.
So was the lens, like, away from the lake? Or was it on the route to, do you know this information? Is it, like,
it was
the
a
route
short
to the
ways
lake?
into the woods, I believe, from what I've gathered.
Yeah, I'm curious if that's, like, from where they were to the lake. Is this where she got lost, or had she gone to the lake and then, like, a different direction the lens appears, right? Like, is there indication of movement away from wherever they were? Because, we're thinking here about the mystery of them disappearing, and we're obviously going to get into theories later, but it's spinning my wheels thinking, okay, well, what are the clues that are stacking up? Because everybody's disappearing with, like, no real trace. I mean, there's some evidence left, but, they're not finding, like, tracks, it doesn't seem like. So what is my wheels are spinning of what's connecting these things together.
Well, that's going to come into play here in a moment when we get into some of what the Missing 411 organization's theories are. All of these, it's worth noting, were compiled by Missing 411 and its founder. A detail that I found intriguing about this particular case is that Stacy, the last thing she said to any of her family was an argument with her father about her footwear, that she was wearing flip-flops. And her dad was like, if you're going to go very far, put on something better. Because they had, like, ridden horses out to this location. And she had changed into these flip-flops walking around camp. And she was like, no, it's cool. I'm not going into the woods. I'm not going on a hike. She was just taking a walk to take some photographs. So she was clearly not planning on going far, which makes me think this isn't like a runaway situation or a get lost in the woods situation.
Right. So it is mysterious, the location of the lens and all of that, just based off that argument. Huh. Interesting.
Stephen Kubacki, age 24, disappeared while cross-country skiing near Lake Michigan. His footprints were found in the snow where they came to an abrupt end. 14 months later, he awoke in a field 700 miles due east from where he disappeared, with no memory of the time in between. The last thing he remembers is the darkness and the cold and the fear of being lost on Lake Michigan. This is where we start getting into some almost fantastical territory.
Mm-hmm.
Because this guy not only was found alive, he has no idea what happened to him out here. And here we have another body of water. Here we have these all of these cases so far have been connected by a few threads. And maybe this is, reaching, but as we're going to talk about later, one of the things that a lot of these missing 411 cases have in common is disappearances near a body of water in an isolated area of the woods.
The circumstances of this disappearance always a lot to like the theory of aliens, right? The footprints that stop dead,
This one in particular.
coming back somewhere. And yeah, this one, like all those things stack up. The other leading theory of that, though, is just people having like complete mental shifts, mental breakdowns, like blacking out and going about their lives for a while and coming back to it and having no memory of it. Even like split personalities, right? Like there are certain things that certainly could attribute to it, but that gets a little stickier the more you talk to the person that this happened to, and those theories just don't line up.
Unlike these previous ones, unfortunately, we don't know what happened to Stacey Arras. We can't speak with her. Casey Hathaway is 3 years old when he disappeared and was found. That's not something we can get a reliable document from. James Madison was found dead. Stephen has, he did interviews. He's a cognizant adult who woke up, 700 miles. And apparently, allegedly, you could draw a direct straight line from the place where he disappeared at Lake Michigan, 700 miles directly east to where he then woke up in a field with... And apparently he had stuff in his pockets that that investigators thought he had been as far east as California. Or as far west as California.
That's interesting. So he has stuff from his journeys. It wasn't like he disappeared with all the same things. He had more things on him when he came back too.
Exactly. Yeah. And
Cool.
Researchers with search and rescue, they thought he drowned because these footprints ended abruptly, but he was near the lake. So they assumed that he must have wandered into the water, but apparently that didn't happen. It sounds like he was succumbing to hypothermia. That's his last memory. And then a year later, he's, 700 miles away with, a pack of chewing gum and a receipt from San Francisco grocery.
He's whisked away by the angel of San Francisco and brought to the coast. And the angel tells him, "Go east, child."
The angel of San Francisco, isn't that the crow?
Yeah, I mean...
That was LA. The crow of San Francisco is like the crow.
Oh, I thought it was like the movie The Crow.
That's what I was referencing. Yeah.
Okay,
but I think he was based in LA. So you have to, if you're going to San Francisco, it's sort of a more flamboyant cousin of the crow. The peacock.
Anyone from California will tell you those two cities are not close to each other. That is quite the journey between the two. So that would be quite a thing for the angel to do. But
and he was out backpacking by himself, right? Which is obviously not a great idea.
It's never a smart call.
And he was a college student at a Christian college, which I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but maybe it was a divine intervention.
Yeah, we did already pitch the theory of angels, so it could potentially lend together. I still feel with something like this, it's probably something mental, but also aliens are never really off the table in a show like this, especially at a time like this.
The internet has gone crazy with theories from some of these, so I've got a couple more for you, but your head is in the right place going out to these sort of deeper waters to explain it, because I don't know that one explanation is going to fit all of these, especially this next one. Christopher Tompkins, 21 years old, vanished within 50 feet of his coworkers while conducting a land survey. On a barbed wire fence nearby, they discovered a scrap of fabric from his work pants, and on the ground below, pocket change and one of his boots.
The weird connecting line between all of these is that disappearance so close to where they were, right? Like that, the Stacey Ross had that. That's kind of the same thing with Christopher Tompkins. Like they're very close to people around them, and then they disappear. I mean, that's wild.
To hear his coworker, because he was a part of a land survey crew, and to hear his coworkers tell the story, they looked over, saw him 50 feet away, turned to talk to someone else for a minute, looked back, and he was gone. Now, I could believe that this person, whoever they are, we don't know anything about his background necessarily. Maybe he ran away, right? Maybe he was involved in something. But to have one of his boots be discovered is kind of strange, because if you were running away, surely you wouldn't want to leave. Like, he's out there hobbling around with one shoe on It doesn't make sense to me.
Also, like, I know, I'm not going to project or anything, but I've never been running away for something and ran out of a shoe. Like, that's the point of a shoe, is to help you run faster.
And it's a work boot.
Yeah, like, so it's weird that it comes off. That kind of almost implies some type of like struggle or something to have that like taken off.
A struggle. I mean, if we go back to James Madison's story, he was running, maybe he's running because he's lost in the woods. Maybe he's running from something. Casey Hathaway, a bear took care of him. Stacey Rass missing. Stephen Kubacki doesn't remember what happened to him. Perhaps some people would look at these cases and begin to see an outline of an answer.
I feel like with Christopher Tompkins, I'm almost inclined to believe that they fell into some like underground mine, like slip, because in the immediacy of the disappearance. But I mean, it doesn't quite line up because they found a boot somewhere else, right? It wasn't like where he was.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, they're like in a field near some woods when he goes missing. And again, all of these, there was extensive search and rescue operations for pretty much all of these cases. I have one more story for you before we get into David Paulides and Missing 411 and theories, which is the most interesting part. This one, I think we have to take with a little grain of salt because it's the most sensational of all the stories, as well as I think the scariest. In 2010, a 3-year-old boy whose name has been withheld went missing at sunset while camping with his family. Late that night, he was found alive in a thicket next to a trail that search and rescue teams had been using for hours. He would later claim that he had been taken by his other grandmother to a cave with spiders, purses, and guns. This other grandma allegedly looked like a robot in certain lights. She made the boy lie on his back and inspected his stomach, as well as asking him to defecate on a piece of sticky paper. When he could not perform this act, the other grandma took him back into the woods, where she left him under a bush and told him to wait until someone came for him.
Sensational is certainly a good word to use for this. It's pretty buck wild.
Yes, but if a 3-year-old goes missing and says a bear took care of them, maybe I could write that off as his imagination went wild, or perhaps a bear actually took care of them. Here, I mean, if a child came to me and was like, I was taken by someone who looked like grandma and did weird things to me, my mind is not going to go necessarily to child making this up or alien robot grandma, but my child was abducted for a short period of time.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of evidence that leads toward it. There's a lot of detail to the story, and usually kids aren't like, especially a 3-year-old, they make up sensational stories, but they're really not cohesive in this way. So that is kind of suspicious overall. Suspicious to also be the truth, but also suspicious in the other direction, because like this lady asking him to poop on sticky paper, like what is she's inspecting his stomach. There's a lot of like strange things that even like I can't like, other than like witchcraft, I don't really know. Like, it's not like a band of robbers who was weird to this boy and then let him go.
It could be a Goonies situation, Lucky. We don't want to discount Goonies from our theory list just yet.
I agree. I don't want to take that off the table, because the purses and guns on top of looking like a robot in a cave, that's some Goonies ass shit.
So with these true missing person stories in mind, I want to take a moment to describe the organization that brought these and many more. They've documented hundreds of cases. I just want to highlight them a little bit and sort of what their mission is.
Mm-hmm.
There's some other details about the robot grandma, by the way, that I want to get out there. There's a second part to the story that allegedly the grandmother was, of course, disturbed to hear that she had some sort of doppelganger. But the grandmother had an experience in woods close by about a year earlier where she had woken up in the morning after going to sleep in her tent. She woke up outside of the tent on her back with like a wound on the back of her head.
Whoa, Jesus.
Yeah. So maybe grandma got drunk and fell over, and then a year later her grandson went missing, but it's certainly suspicious.
Maybe grandma fell over, bonked her head, created an alternate identity, started living in the woods half her time when she wasn't with the grandchild, was in the woods, stole him, tried to get his poo-poo, tried to, look at his tummy, and then put him back and called it good.
Goonies 2. There's the plot right there. Missing 411 is a series of nonfiction books and documentary films created by former police officer David Paulides. He documents these cases and many more like them. His work highlights the similarities between these incidences, including geographic clusters of the missing, people vanishing just out of eyesight or within earshot of friends and family, as well as landscape features, including berry patches, bodies of water, and boulder fields.
Palladius also points out that the National Park Service does not currently maintain a catalog of disappearances, making it difficult for any potential patterns to be studied or investigated. He accuses the NPS of purposefully obfuscating the data and of withholding information from him and other truth seekers. It's worth noting that Palladius' credentials include not only a career in law enforcement, but an ongoing fascination with cryptozoology, in particular the legend of Sasquatch.
It's also worth noting that he does not offer any explanation in his Missing 411 work. He compiles all these cases, but he stops short of offering a solution to this riddle.
Do you mean like of who's doing it, of how to like stop it from happening? Or he's just giving us the information of here's all the things that happened in the case. Period.
He's saying like this is happening. The information is not being collected by the National Park Service. I am taking that on myself. Here's the information. I don't know what's going on. Make of it what you will.
Interesting.
But if you take that in, so he's written a few books, right? Most of them are Missing 411 books. But before that, he's an avid believer in the Sasquatch.
I like that about it. It's funny that he's not connecting those dots, but like knowing his history, that imaginary bridge builds in the head, right? Like, oh, interesting.
He's like, well, Bigfoot's out there. And then also a bunch of people are going missing out here. You asked me if Bigfoot's doing it? Interesting theory.
Speak more on that, please.
I mean,
you've got my attention.
If not offering a solution, I think it accomplishes a few things. You know, the most obvious is that he's not saying if he comes out and says Bigfoot's making these people disappear, he's going to sound like a kook, and I think he's going
to be discredited immediately, right? And this information just gets lost to obscurity because some guy thinks it's Bigfoot.
I mean, in hearing all this information, I mean, how many listeners out there tuned and thought, "Oh, this guy's a kook," as soon as you hear the word Bigfoot? Oh, he's a cryptozoologist interested in Sasquatch. He's a crazy person. But these are true stories of people that have gone missing, and he's the only one out there cataloging them.
I mean, looking through the evidence that was compiled, you're seeing like images of the search parties, you're seeing images of the missing people and the news articles written about them. So, I mean, it is like the reporting that was done for these cases. So, I mean, it's very like good information as far as like I know from being not an expert at all.
But science doesn't work like that. If he's really approaching this with an objective mind, you can't just present evidence with no hypothesis,
right? No
conclusion. And I think that there's a big hole in his argument, because when you don't offer an explanation, you are opening the door to conspiracy theories and wild speculation. And in fact, if you go to these communities of Missing 411 forums online or on Reddit, you see the discussion, much like our discussion earlier, kind of running rampant. And it's like, oh, is it aliens? Is it robot grandma? Is it the Goonies? Is it Chunk from the Goonies?
It is Chunk from the Goonies. I think we keep wrapping around on that and it feels right. Each of these scenarios could be explained by Chunk's mysterious powers.
Wait, is Chunk the deformed one from the Goonies, or is he the chubby kid?
I thought he was the one who does the truffle shuffle.
Hold on. Yes. Okay. So Chunk from the Goonies grew up and started kidnapping children. No, not what I'm saying. Who's the? Whoa. Oh, it's Sloth. The Sloth from the Goonies. Well, you can edit that in post.
Yeah, I'll just change all the times you said Chunk into Sloth somehow. No problem.
So let's talk theories. Let's sort of hone in on some possible explanations. If David Palladius is not willing to come out and say what's going on, we will.
We will speculate wildly, so buckle up, folks.
Let's follow him down this road. Bigfoot, Sasquatch, an intelligent cryptozoological creature in the woods, is responsible for these disappearances. What does that look like?
I mean, I want to play in this space with you, but I also have a hard time immediately assuming that Bigfoot is villain. You know, if we're talking about this mythical creature that is trying to be hidden, why would they start taking people and disappearing them?
Well, he's taking care of kids.
The 14-year-old never came back, right? Like, that's still a kid in my books.
That's true. I mean, I don't want to speculate on anyone who went missing. The old man seems like I could make some jokes about him. I mean, a hunter, maybe he tried to shoot Bigfoot. But then how does his feet get worn down? These are mysterious disappearances. I don't know that Bigfoot is I don't know that I don't know that predator, whether that's a human predator or, cryptid, explains all of our case studies, or even all the ones in the book.
Yeah, of the ones that we're looking at, I kind of feel like Casey Hathaway is probably the most likely to have had a Bigfoot encounter. Like, ending up on a small island, a big bear took them there. It's like, well, maybe. And Bigfoot doesn't know how to be gentle. He I'll save the kid, and just kind of chucked her into a briar bush.
Now, do we think the unnamed 3-year-old's grandmother is hairy and tall? Could the grandmother resemble a Sasquatch?
I mean, I wouldn't put it past him, because I've seen some hairy old ladies.
Where?
There's a special website. I'll show you later. You're going to absolutely love it.
We'll drop that in the episode description.
Yeah, we'll put a pin.
Another theory that is popular in the missing 411 community is not of this earth explanations, right? So either aliens or some sort of transdimensional beings that are responsible for these disappearances, because they would allege that these people are disappearing just out of eyesight. They should be calling for help if they're too far away, if they run into something. What could happen to these people that would make them disappear so suddenly, leaving footprints in the snow, not remembering that they are being essentially not attacked by a cryptid, but being abducted by some other intelligent entity?
I mean, we've talked a lot about the nightmare frequency being a space to explore the liminal, too. Is it impossible to think that somebody could open a transdimensional door and just yank somebody through it?
I mean, it's not impossible, I suppose. Are those gateways in the woods? Is that where...
Like ley lines meeting up in a certain spot where the doorway can open? I mean, I guess Stephen Hawking kind of disproved some of this when he invited time travelers to his birthday and they didn't show up. Because he's like, well, there you go. And I feel like he's probably got enough clout to like people would if it was possible. So in our plane, in our reality, I don't know if we're ever going to get there, but that doesn't,
It would be wild. It would be wild if there is like some point of time in like the late 1400s where there's just a bunch of time travelers from the woods of all different eras. And it's like, hey, you get missing 411. Yeah, me too.
If anybody ever stumbled upon them, though, I don't think we would perceive that change. We could be in the middle of recording this podcast, and then our reality would just be, remember that time that all those time travelers showed up in the 1400s, and our lives are completely different?
Oh, yeah. I guess we would find, like, fossils or something. Maybe the distant future. Maybe they're getting transported to the far-flung future.
Yeah, like, do we survive? Good luck. Just throwing them out there to see, oh, that guy died too. A little chart marks him off.
The biggest criticism that Pallades and Missing 411 have drawn is for manipulating the data. People say that they are selectively choosing sensational stories, which, I mean, we're a little guilty of that because we picked, 6 stories that are the most odd, the most, not romantic, but the ones that get your brain burning a little bit.
Yeah, this is an entertainment product.
And they would argue that all of these cases are, people going missing into the woods near, in the middle of nowhere near bodies of water. That happens all the time throughout the entirety of human history. People don't act rationally in survival stress situations. They're going to take off their clothes. They're going to, hallucinate. And that would account for all of these cases, some would say.
Yeah, especially, running your feet ragged all the way. That's a true sign of like dehydration, losing your mind a little bit.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I know that people will take off their clothes, but are they going to keep walking? I mean, I guess he could have taken off his shoes, getting disoriented, lost them, and then kept going.
Yeah, and at a certain point, right, like you convince yourself, I have to keep going, and yeah, if he's like disoriented and his shoes sweep down the river, then...
But if he's an experienced hunter, I don't know that he would. Maybe wouldn't he hunker down? Wouldn't he know that if you're lost in the woods, the best thing to do is to stay where you are and allow others to find you? I mean, he could have fired his gun 3 times in the air and alerted his friend.
That he was having a party, and it was time to come on by because he's celebrating.
Second Amendment party.
I'm dehydrated. Well, that's not fair. This man did not have a good time.
Now, we don't have to look to the supernatural for a intelligent being to be behind some of these disappearances. There is another, rational explanation that there's a human being behind some of these disappearances. That there is some serial killer using our national parks as a hunting ground. It just strikes me as being more believable than a Bigfoot being out there.
Yeah, certainly. I'm thinking, that's definitely a possibility. I'm still feeling like animals have a lot to do with this, right? We haven't heard too much about wolf packs, bears, non-Bigfoot related animals too. Like there's so much stealth that goes into that as well. Like, could it be like a wolf serial killer?
A wolf serial, that's so like a werewolf.
Yeah, I would think it would have some humanoid qualities to maintain its stealth.
The FBI does estimate that there are 25 to 50 active werewolves in America at any given time.
Wow, really? That's a low population. You'd think that'd be bigger.
Well, that's the ballpark.
I wish the FBI would make the werewolf database public.
That's missing 412. I really encourage anyone who's curious to seek out some of these communities, because I think the ambiguity of missing 411 is what makes it so scary to me, that we get that outline of a solution without ever coming around to it. And I mean, these true stories are chilling. I mean, you could look up these names, Stacey Arras, Stephen Kubacki, Christopher Tompkins. These are real people who disappeared and were either, found or not. And it's very chilling. And, but I think that to not offer an explanation opens the door to such wild speculation, because you've got people talking about, what if Bigfoot is a transdimensional fairy? That's a legitimate theory that some of these people have on this website, and it's kindling for conspiracy theories, and it's a little manipulative, I think, to people who are really impressionable.
Yeah, I agree. It would be nice to present a theory kind of scientifically, like you mentioned before. I would love to see like an actual hypothesis of, hey, here's the connecting dots. I've done all this research. Just to put the information out there and leave that ambiguity and that door open is almost, like, as you mentioned, a little irresponsible.
And if you're a Bigfoot theorist, if you are a Bigfoot believer, you could at least come out and say, I don't think it's Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Or I think it's Bigfoot. Like, come down on that at least to squash that rumor.
Or even be like, it could be Bigfoot, right? Because then you're still kind of putting that camp out there. It's just some type of
definitive... If you think it's Bigfoot, own it. Come out and say, like, hey, I'm a former police officer. No one's keeping track of this. I am. And all signs point towards Sassy Quatch. Or Yeti 2. Whatever you want to call it.
Tootie.
Well, okay. I did say whatever you want to call it, but maybe there's a limit to that.
Yeah, you opened the door for me to come in with a bad one.
Pallades also has drawn criticism for sourcing this information himself. So these are based on interviews that he has done. The story of the robot grandma is something, the boy's name has been withheld. So there's not an easy way for us to track down and verify that story.
Yeah,
so,
that's...
for every Stacey Arras where there is, government documents about the search and rescue operations, there are robot grandma stories where it's like a little bit of hearsay, perhaps.
So then his job specifically was to work on missing persons cases? Is that why he's able to have all these interviews? Because, like, the fact that he's sourcing this information, like, was he doing this on the clock?
Missing 411 is separate from his work as a police officer. He's a retired officer of the law.
Oh, okay. Because I thought this was like an active duty officer going to people like, this has nothing to do with a crime,
no,
but I am going to interview you.
He is a former police officer.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes more sense.
Interested in this. And apparently he has tried to file like Freedom of Information Act requests for some of these cases. In fact, Stacey Arras was one where he was denied, and they told him, they allegedly told him that he was never going to get the file. So, he does delve into that conspiracy theory level of the National Park Service is withholding information, that the government is hiding something or doesn't want these cases to be investigated together as one, which, I mean, he has a little bit of a point. I'm not saying that the government is necessarily, I'm not saying, I don't think the government is trying to withhold information, but it is weird that people are disappearing in our national parks under similar circumstances, and there's not an official database of that information. And so that he has to do it, which then fuels fire to conspiracy theorists, which I don't necessarily agree with.
Yeah, I think there's also multiple reasons why that information could be withheld, because we are talking about like a 14-year-old kid. It might be something that the parents want, right? Like, hey, like this is information about an underage teen. Like, I don't want people just digging this up and finding out about it.
True.
Right? Like, and just like for privacy reasons, I would think that might be something to work on. But because you're right, like them only saying, well, we were denied and it's the government holding it behind this door. It's like, of course you're going to have conspiracy theories. There's all kinds of crazy conspiracy theories out there about what the government's doing. But by that same token, right, like I think it's easy to dive into that camp and just say, like, you know what, they're lying to us. It's crazy. It's like they probably are, but it doesn't always have to be for the reason you think it is. Right?
They're not trying to keep a colony of intergalactic, interdimensional Bigfoot fairies
Right. They didn't capture
secret.
and start cultivating the Bigfoot theories in underground camp where they're mating like crazy and starting to come out into the real world, and the government can't stop it.
But regardless, people are going missing and dying. So that's a wild transition.
Yeah, wow. Just from the jokes to the sadness, huh? All right.
I mean, we are having a lot of fun here, but people are going missing and dying in our national parks. And the question that for Missing 411 asks, and I guess the question that needs to be under the most scrutiny is, could we and or the Park Service be doing more? Because even if all these people are disappearing and dying or being recovered due to misadventure, right? That is still a problem. There are still way too many people. I would love the number of people going missing and dying in our national parks to be as close to zero as possible.
Yeah, that's a zero goal that we should all be achieving, or at least working toward.
And so, is Missing 411 a cause for good, giving a voice to those who have disappeared, perhaps under mysterious circumstances? Or is it a total conspiracy theory, exploiting the missing and leaving blank spaces for paranoid readers to insert their own harebrained theories? Or is it some combination of the two? Lucky, final thoughts. What do you think?
I think with the final question you pose, it's probably a little bit of a combo breaker here. They are mysterious disappearances, and the fact that there isn't a database for them is concerning overall, because it does seem like it should be a bigger issue. Though, again, I don't work in a place where I have to make decisions of money allotment for different terrible things happening in this place. There's another explanation there of there's maybe bigger crime that they feel like they can solve, so the government does not put money toward it at all, and that's where this conspiracy theory comes from. But I think for me, probably like animals. I'm gonna say for the people who are disappearing and we're finding them kind of lost with pieces away. I'm thinking those are stealthy animals. I think maybe serial killers is a pretty solid idea, right? I think talking about 25 to 50 active in America anytime, that's certainly a very concerning statistic. And what better place than where nobody can find you?
Yeah, I'm tempted to agree with you, because I think Pallades' heart is in the right place. And if your child goes missing, the answer of, well, they got lost in the woods and we don't have any, and maybe that's a part of the pattern, but we don't have the budget to deal with that. That's a tough answer to receive as a parent or a loved one of someone who's gone missing. And so, I think the notion of keeping track of them yourself and trying to unearth some truth is a good one. But when the result of that is people think that it's Sasquatch or people think that it's interdimensional beings, that is not a step towards justice. That is not a step towards truth. And so, I think that more could be done to stop these incidences from happening. And animal attack, human origins is what my mind is drawn to. But ultimately, some of these disappearances, if we're to take these stories at face value and believe the missing who have been recovered, I don't know that there's an easy answer for people like Stephen Kubacki, who disappeared with a year of his life missing. Maybe he was on drugs. Yeah, sure. Maybe he had a mental breakdown. But if we were to believe his story, that he has shied away from the media, so he clearly doesn't want attention. If we're to believe his story, that there's no answer that is a serial killer. There is no answer that is necessarily an animal. I think if we're to take his story as true, which it's easy to not do, but if we're to start there, I don't know that there's an easy answer that can be put in a box with a nice little bow on it.
Mm-hmm. Well said.
If you have a thought on this episode, I have a feeling this episode might stir up a little bit of, there's a lot of haters out there, for Missing 411 and David Pallades. There's a lot of ire towards his methodology. And I do agree with a lot of the criticism towards him. But if you have a theory that we did not broach, or if you have thoughts on Missing 411, whether positive or negative, we'd love to hear from you.
That's going to wrap up this week's mysteries, but we'll be back next time for more nightmares and more frequencies. If you have a story of the spooky, strange, or unexplained that you would like to see featured on the show, we want to hear it. You can reach us by email at nightmarefrequencypodcast@gmail.com or on Instagram at nightmarefq.
Thank you to Matt Harris for the use of our theme song, Strange Stuff. And thank you for listening. If you like the show, please leave a review on iTunes, Google Podcast, or wherever you're listening from. It's really important for shows to get that kind of coverage. And really, the best thing you could do if you are a fan of the show is to tell your friends about it. We don't advertise in any way, so word of mouth is the only way for us to grow and connect with a wider audience.
This has been The Nightmare Frequency. We now return you to your regularly scheduled programming.